I wanted to like this movie so bad. Welcome back to the Spectral Frame. Today we're getting into the directorial debut of OG YouTuber Chris Stuckman. It's a film that's part documentary, part found footage, part narrative film, and 100% messy. It's Shelby Oaks. Don't ask me about the math on that. I'm over 200 grand in debt to the Los Angeles Mime School. No, I'm not paying.
Why didn't you give it to the police?
Riley Brennan is now missing. She was last seen in Shelby Oaks.
I came into Shelby Oaks really wanting to like this movie. I think the marketing is cool. I like the posters, the trailer's cool. There's this interesting kind of lo-fi aesthetic they have going on. I like all that stuff. But I also want Chris Stuckman to do well. I feel like he's massively lost the passion for reviewing movies and just wants to kind of move on and be a director in his own right, and that's fine. That's a great pursuit, and I wish him well in that. I just want to be clear, I'm not here to dogpile on Chris Stuckman or shit on him in any way. Like, I think there are really cool things about Shelby Oaks, and I want to talk about those, but I'm also not going to shy away from talking about any actual criticisms I have for the movie. And there's a lot. For those of you invested in that angle, I wouldn't call this a YouTuber film in the Shane Dawson or Smosh sense of the word, but Shelby Oaks is definitely YouTuber coded in a way that we're going to talk about a little bit later. I just think when a YouTuber makes a movie about YouTubers, it kind of draws attention to who is behind the camera and makes your story feel a little less immersive in that way. Another weird thing about this movie is that even though Neon, the company behind stuff like Long Legs and The Monkey and I guess whatever else Osgood Perkins is doing, they released this movie, but I feel like it came to theaters and left really quickly, here in Los Angeles at least. I saw posters everywhere around town about this movie. I thought this was going to be like a pretty big, like long, like release. I felt like they were putting a lot of money into the marketing budget. I did catch this movie at a later time on a weeknight, so there wasn't a lot of people there, but there was, and I swear to you, a genuine Kickstarter backer for Shelby Oaks. This dude was wearing the t-shirt and everything. I wanted to ask him so bad what he thought of this movie after, but I wouldn't want some weird dude approaching me, so I kind of let it go. And by let it go, I mean there's like technically a restraining order against me, so thanks, Derek. Anyway, we gotta go through the plot of Shelby Oaks, so this is your one and only spoiler warning for the rest of the video, so keep that in mind as we go forward. Taco Steve, sound the spoiler alarm. Pathetic.
What's left in Shelby Oaks is death.
Shelby Oaks opens in documentary mode where we get a little bit of backstory. Riley Brennan and her 3 paranormal investigator friends have gone missing back in 2008 when they went to explore the ghost town of Shelby Oaks, Ohio. These 4 were the hosts of popular YouTube channel Paranormal Paranoids.
Paranormal Paranoids?
What were they paranoid about? Not clear. Later, the bodies of 3 of the paranormal investigators were found, but not Riley's. It's a mystery. Along with the bodies, they also recovered one of 2 cameras that the group was using to film, and on this camera, it has footage of Riley being really spooked out in this old house before something happens, and she was taken. We don't know what happens, but she was scared. We know that. We then get to meet Riley's sister Mia in this documentary, who believes that Riley is still alive even though it's been 12 years since she first disappeared. While the documentary crew takes a break from shooting, somebody knocks on Mia's front door, she answers it, and the man standing there proceeds to blow his brains out in spectacular fashion, all while holding this little mini DV tape. The tape has Shelby Oaks written on it, and it turns out that's the missing tape from when Riley went missing 12 years ago. Also, does anybody here remember DV tapes? I feel like I have nostalgia for certain formats, but not many DV tapes. Anyway, the footage on that tape shows Riley being taken by the man who blew his brains out on Mia's porch. It turns out this man was a former convict, or was a it's kind of unclear who he was, but he was in prison at one point as a violent criminal offender, and his name was Wilson Miles. Wilson Miles. Mia hides the tape from the police because she doesn't really trust them to go looking for Riley, but it pulls her into this, like, obsessive bout of research. She even goes to the library. She learns about the sexiest of demons called an incubus and comes to believe that Riley was the victim of some dark occult ritual involving said incubus.
I'm here, baby. I'm ready, baby. I'm waiting on you.
Sounds hot. Mia then goes on a mission to Shelby Oaks in the dead of night for some reason to check out the prison and the abandoned amusement park where Riley disappeared. She's spooked out by some hellhounds and follows them through the woods where they lead her to this creepy old house. At the house, Mia meets an old woman named Norma who, it turns out, she's the mother of Wilson Miles, the guy who evicted his own brains from his skull. Mia does a little bit of snooping in the house and comes to discover that Norma is actually a devout follower of the incubus Terrion. His friends call him Terry. Turns out Riley was being used to conceive a baby boy for the incubus. Oh my god, so much shit going on. Norma leads Mia downstairs to Riley, who is still alive and chained up, so Mia unties her, but before they can escape, Riley runs upstairs up towards her baby. But before they can do anything, they find Norma upstairs doing this weird blood ritual thing over the baby for the incubus Terry. And then I guess Norma dies. After Riley and the baby get out of the hospital, Riley tries to smother the baby, calling it evil and possessed, but Mia has to step in and stop her by accidentally pushing her out of a window. Riley doesn't die though. That happens very shortly after when a bunch of hellhounds come and gobble her body up. Mia screams from the window looking down at her sister who has become a buffet, and behind her, Terry the incubus is there, right over her shoulders. Roll credits. Obviously, I have some issues with this movie, and we'll get to those, but there are some things I do like about Shelby Oaks, so let's hop on over to my likes and talk about those first. First on my list of likes is the mystery. I think there's a lot of interesting setup to this mystery. Like, we have that footage of Riley that's really spooky where she's alone in this room in this spooky house and something's out there and we don't know, and it's kind of lo-fi. Like, I think that's really interesting, but it also poses a lot of really interesting and intriguing questions. If the other investigators are dead, is she dead? If so, where's her body? If not, where is she? Did she get killed later? Did she even have something to do with this whole thing? Maybe she was in on it somehow. It sparks a lot of questions. Also, you know, who was she taken by? Why were there demonic symbols scattered everywhere? There's so many interesting questions presented in a way that I did find compelling. Like, I wanted to know more about this. Next on my list of likes is the cinematography. I think this film looks pretty good. I kind of said this in my last review with Good Boy. It looks way better than I anticipated it looking. It's a real movie, right? It's lit really great and it's shot really great, and I definitely admire the attention to detail with the cinematography. So kudos to that. I think what's interesting is, like, you know, the difference between the found footage and the regular footage, but an issue kind of comes in with, I wish there was more difference between the documentary footage and the actual narrative footage, but still, regardless of that, it still looked really good. I have no issues with how this movie looked.
Welcome back to the Paranormal Paranoids.
Next up, I really like how the found footage was blended into the narrative. Shelby Oaks doesn't do that thing where it gives like a narrative framing device and then it's just found footage for most of the time. It really weaves that found footage in with the narrative and the documentary footage that I think really propels the story forward. That mixed media is visually interesting. We get to see the characters watching it, but also get to learn a lot from the footage itself. I think it's a really great tactic. Unfortunately, this only happens for like the first half of the movie, but I would have really liked to see this fleshed out more and woven in through the entire film because I think it was really effective when it was used. Last on my list of likes is the acting. Now, I don't think this was like Oscar-worthy acting or anything like that, but I think the main cast was really solid. I think they elevated some of the issues I had with this script in a way that maybe the movie didn't deserve, but I think they did a fantastic job on like bringing all these pieces together. There was a lot of pretty emotional performances here, and I gotta hand it to them. I think they did a really good job. There was some secondary acting that was a little more rocky, like Mia's husband. I don't think was very good, and all the fake news reporters didn't really do it for me, but I think the main cast was good, and I think they did a fantastic job with what they had to work with, so kudos to them. And honestly, that's it for my likes. I really enjoyed those aspects of this movie, and I think they were the strongest for me personally, but now's the time. We gotta get into it. We gotta talk about my dislikes.
Today we're taking our first foray into the abandoned town of Shelby Oaks.
First on my list of dislikes has to be the writing. I don't think it's possible for me to overstate this, but this is the biggest problem by far. And not only in the story sense, there's a lot of first draft dialogue here. Characters also do things that the writer needs the character to do to move the plot forward, not because it's what the character actually would have done. There's a lot of examples of this. We're gonna get into the specifics shortly, but this just felt like a first feature film script, which that doesn't automatically make it bad. What makes it bad is that it doesn't feel like it was revised or like any notes were taken on this. Like a lot of this feels like first draft decisions, like things you get out on the page quickly to get your ideas out, and then you come back later and clean it up, but it feels like nobody came back later to clean all these things up. Dark County, Ohio? Paranormal paranoids? Like, this is first draft stuff. What's more disappointing, though, is that Mike Flanagan executive produced this movie. I just saw him speak at the Writers Guild Foundation, and he talked at length about his writing process and how he meticulously approaches complicated stories and pulls them apart and stress tests them in all these different ways to make sure they work. But that approach doesn't seem to be handed down to Chris Stuckman. Did he give notes or advice at all? Did he just attach his name? Is this executive produced and name only? Like, I want to know, because I really wish he would have given notes on the writing. Next on my list of dislikes is the pacing. Despite my issues with some of the beginning of this film, I do like the way it moved. Like, I think we were getting a lot of information. We're moving the story along in like a relatively interesting way, but we kind of hit that halfway mark and we just slam on the brakes. This is when Riley's sister Mia decides to go to Shelby Oaks and look for clues herself. But she doesn't learn anything new. There's no new information we're getting out of this. She just goes to the creepy prison and then goes to the creepy amusement park and has a couple jump scares along the way until she lands at this creepy old house. And even when we get to the creepy house, the scene is still so slow until we get to the end of it. I feel like once we hit that halfway mark, the movie really tries to rely on atmosphere, but it didn't do that much to create the atmosphere. The decisions that led to these situations were like not well built, so I didn't feel any tension. I didn't really feel any atmosphere. It just kind of felt like a cheap haunted house. Oh, it just feels like it's wasting my fucking time. I find this break in the story and break in the pacing so frustrating because it had a lot of momentum going into the second half of this film that it just unloaded and just let completely die.
I've been searching for Riley for the last 12 years. I know my sister's not dead.
Bodies were found outside of Shelby Oaks.
Next on my list of dislikes was how messy this movie was. Shelby Oaks has so many ideas, and honestly, there's a lot of good ideas in here too, but instead of filtering through those ideas and streamlining them to tell the most impactful story, it decides to take every idea and just jam it all in there anyway. First off, the fact that Riley was a YouTuber and part of this paranormal investigation group that went missing, I think that's interesting world building. I think it's interesting that they had some sort of like popularity and now they're missing. But I think we focus on some of the other members and their relationships to Riley and how many views the videos were getting and how many likes they were getting and what the comments were saying. Like, we focused on all of that quite a lot in the beginning, but it paid off in no way. Like, none of that matters at all. This is why I think the movie is kind of YouTuber coded. Like, it focuses on a lot of these things that don't matter. They don't matter to the story, and we focus on it so much. And after the other members are found dead, we never talk about them, like, ever again. And I don't know, like, you'd think it would be some kind of turning point or something, but they don't do anything with this. I also want to talk about the documentary angle to this. I think it's interesting to get a lot of backstory, but the documentary crew is like inserted into the story, but not in a way that like makes any sense or adds to anything else. Like, I think the documentary angle to this movie is interesting, but it doesn't really add up to anything. Like, you can keep it in there, but I think you should change it. Instead of Mia actually participating in this documentary, I think we start the movie off with like a kind of over-the-top Netflix documentary style like vision of this, where it's over the top. You know, some of those documentaries are kind of in poor taste, and I think you can do a lot of commentary with that and also tell us a lot of backstory. Then I think the documentary crew shows up to Mia's house to try to get an interview, but she refuses because, as she says in the movie, she's sick of the media running her sister's name through the mud. Like, people are kind of blaming Riley for this thing that happened, even though she's missing. So in this scenario, Mia would want nothing to do with this documentary crew, and as they drive away, there's a man that passes them and goes up to the front door. They keep the cameras rolling, and they see from a distance this man blow his brains out in front of Mia's front door. Then we get into the narrative aspect of it, where we see from Mia's perspective. A, I think it's more shocking, but B, I think it makes more sense because why would Mia want to participate in this documentary at all? So it sets up her character as not wanting to do this thing, and it also gives us story, and it also gives us a little bit of that documentary, weird, real life kind of feel to it before we get into the actual narrative footage. But like the way it happens now, everything just feels so forced to get us to stay in that documentary world. And I'm not even done with how messy this movie is. Oh my god. This feels like horror movie paint by numbers. There's so many things that happen because that's what happens in a horror movie. And characters do things because that's what characters in horror movies do, not because they're built that way. There's even a library research scene. We don't need those anymore. Why do we have to go to the library and look at microfiche and look at old newspaper clippings and shit? Like, I hate this. I hate those scenes. We're past that. This isn't Seven from 1994 or whenever. Like, we have phones. We have computers. There's other more interesting ways of learning information instead of like a bunch of montages of like things flying by and we kind of can read things as quick as we can and then we move on. It's so outdated and felt so forced into this movie. I also have questions about the second half of this movie. Like, Riley's been missing for 12 years, but it isn't until now that Mia goes to Shelby Oaks to like look for clues. Like, she knows that's where she disappeared from. They have that original tape. Why is she just now going? And why is she going in the dark? There's no f***ing reason why she takes off and decides to go do her investigation, whatever, in the dark, in the middle of the f***ing night. That's just a horror movie trope. And I'm not saying those things have to happen during the day, but like, write a reason why she has to go there at night. Like, build that into the story. That creates tension, that creates character like dynamics, that like tells us more about Mia, that she's so determined to find her sister that she has to go right now. Like, build that in. We also have to talk about Mia meeting the old woman Norma at her spooky house in the woods. Oh my god. This old woman Norma gives Mia 0 reasons to go in her house. Not one. If I met some creepy old woman in the woods when I was like looking for my missing cat or something, there's no way I would go into her house. You run away. It's the middle of the night and she looks scary. But no, Mia just waltzes into her house, like hoping to just talk to this crazy lady in the woods. Like, you could have done something interesting. Like, Norma, the old woman, could have mentioned seeing a woman or something like that. Like, you force Mia into this house because she is so determined to find Riley that she has no other choice than to enter this house. That creates tension, and it also, again, adds to character. But the way it's written now and the way it happens now is that Mia's just kind of talking to this random old woman in the woods by her house and goes inside to talk to her. Like, everything is screaming, do not go into this fucking old creepy house, but Mia just, okay, I guess I'll go inside. Why? Why? You could have just written it different. And again, not to keep harping on the writing, I'm going to, but like, it's literally the most free part of making a movie. Like, there's no expensive gear, you don't have to hire a bunch of crew or like find locations or sign contracts or anything. You can just write for free in your house. You don't even have to get out of your pajamas. You can just write it. You can just take notes and do revisions and just write it better. There's no reason why you should have gone through this entire movie without having a solid script. Period. Okay, the next thing is a wild choice. When Mia is in the house, she's looking at stuff, she's snooping at things, and she comes across a photo album where she sees her sister Riley being used in these satanic or occult rituals for the incubus. Why are they taking family photos of a horrible occult ritual where they have to assault a woman and create a baby? Like, they're taking pictures of this and putting it in a book like we're gonna revisit this at Christmas or something, and like we're gonna show it to friends because we're so proud of this. Why? Why do this? There's other ways of getting this information. Why does it have to be a scrapbook? Like, I rolled my eyes so freaking hard when this happened. It just doesn't make sense, but it was funny. I did laugh tremendously when I saw this. It's an insane choice. Okay, getting to the end, another thing that was really messy about this was that when Riley gets out of the hospital, we see that Mia's talking to the documentary camera crew. Like, you mean to tell me you discovered your sister and this baby that she had, and the first day you bring her home from the hospital, you tell this documentary crew to come on in and shoot, come in my house, do your thing. Like, what? That makes Mia look like she does not care about Riley at all. It makes Mia look like a fame-hungry weirdo. Like, this feels so out of character for her. If she cares so much about her sister and cares so much about her sister doing well and getting better, why would you have a f***ing documentary crew come in? That's an insane choice. Everything's an insane choice, but we also have to talk about that ending scene. After Mia says goodbye to the documentary crew and they go away, she goes upstairs to find Riley standing over the baby's crib with a pillow, like, signaling that she's gonna smother the baby. But Mia, instead of just running over and grabbing the pillow, Mia says, Riley, you gotta put it down. You gotta put it down. It's like, Riley's not holding a gun to this baby's head. She doesn't have a knife or something over this baby. It's a pillow. Just run over there and take it from her. Why are you acting like she's like 1 second away from ending this baby? She's just standing there with a pillow. I don't know. That reaction was just insane, dude. Like, just take the fucking pillow. Why is it happening like this? Why were these choices made? Oh God, it's so messy. Okay. I'm done. There's so many things, and I could talk forever, but those are the messiest things to me.
The last night I saw her, she said she saw a man standing in her window, staring at her.
All right, next on my list of dislikes is how seriously this movie took itself. I know I was dogging before on the dark county Ohio and the paranormal paranoids and that kind of stuff. I don't innately hate those things. I just think if the movie took itself less seriously, I could buy into those elements more. Yes, some material deserves to be taken seriously, things with heavy themes or whatever, but this is decidedly not that. Adding lighter elements to this movie could have done so much for it. It helped us get past some of the goofier things, but also helped comment more and push the meaning of this film in a certain direction. I kind of mentioned earlier about if we redid the beginning of this to make it more of an over-the-top Netflix-style documentary, I think there's some interesting commentary in there. There's some interesting satire you could play with, while also letting us have fun. This movie could have been really fun despite all the goofy stuff going on, but it took itself so seriously that it didn't allow us to have any of that fun, which made me dislike it quite a bit, actually. And speaking of themes, I don't feel like there's really any themes to this movie, at least consistently. If I'm digging in, I would say the biggest theme of this movie is family and what family would do for their own, maybe childhood trauma, but a lot of that is just thrown away, especially with the family theme, based on how Mia treats Riley. She's prioritizing a documentary crew over her own sister at times. It's just, I don't know, it's weird. It doesn't land. It just feels like, hey, I want to do this spooky movie with some twists and turns and lots of deep lore, and that's fine, but it just felt funky. I don't feel like this movie had anything to actually say. It just was trying to say, hey, I'm Chris Stuckman and I made a real movie, and that's fine, but I want more than that. There's an opportunity in this movie for more than that. There's so many themes you could have explored. Outside of family, you could have explored, what it means to be a popular YouTuber. That's prescient for Chris Stuckman. You could have explored what documentaries do to people and like how it treats its victims. And I don't know, there's a lot you can say with this movie, but I don't feel like it said anything, dude. Damn.
Yeah.
And finally, last on my list of dislikes is the set design. Not in the whole movie, but definitely in some parts. There's a number of interesting real-life locations used in this movie, but some things felt out of place. Like Norma's house, the creepy old house in the woods at the end. When you go in, it's practically empty and designed kind of like a haunted house, you know? Like when you go into a haunted house, there's like mold and things are falling off the walls and it's spooky, but like there's nothing in this house really, so it just feels like they grabbed a few things from Goodwill and distressed the walls, and like that's spooky. Like I don't know, it just felt kind of cheap. And like maybe that's a nitpick, but like I think set design, especially in a big pivotal scene like that, really comes into play. Like it can really help your film and set a tone and atmosphere, but this just kind of felt like a hokey haunted house scene. So I don't know, it's a little nitpicky in the grand scheme of things, but definitely something I noticed and definitely something I was thinking about a lot when I was watching that scene. And that's it for my dislikes. I know there was a lot, thanks for sticking with me, but I just think in total, like, the most frustrating thing about Shelby Oaks is that I see an interesting, good version of this movie in there, but the execution and the writing just did not pull it off. But now that I'm done rambling, we gotta get some other opinions in the mix, you know? I'm not the authority on this movie, so we're gonna go to IMDb and see what all those weirdos are talking about. We're gonna look at the 10-star reviews and the 1-star reviews.
You live alone out here? Nope.
As of this recording, Shelby Oaks has a 5.8 on IMDb, and for my taste, I would put this closer to a 4.5, I think. Yeah. Our first 10-star review comes from Spence the Gamer LA France? Sorry. This is Chris Stuckman's first film, and he directs as though he is a veteran filmmaker. Having just viewed Shelby Oaks at Fantasia, I can honestly say that it did not disappoint. I wouldn't say Chris Stuckman's direction is, like, comparative to a veteran filmmaker. Like, it's definitely his first film, but I don't think it's a bad outing as a first-time director. Like, I think scene to scene, like, he knows what he's doing, or rather, he knows what he wants, and the film looks good. Again, most of the problems are story-based, but I think he's decent behind the camera. I think he's going to do better and learn more as he goes, and I do hope he keeps going. Like, I think he has an interesting eye for this stuff, so kudos to Chris Stuckman. I think it's a decent directorial start. I am, of course, biased, being a long-term fan of his YouTube channel, but I would argue that it has little to no effect on my 10 out of 10 rating. This is a great film which I believe will please both fans of Stuckman and people unaware of who he is. It's no exaggeration to say I love this movie and would definitely recommend it to others looking for a new good horror movie. Can't wait to see what he does next. This definitely wouldn't be my first recommend to somebody who is like looking for new horror films, but I am interested to see what Chris Stuckman does next. I think he has directorial talent, so we'll see where it goes. Our next 10-star review comes from Phil M.A. Kerr. The movie has all the hallmarks of a very solid shoestring budget independent production. The found footage gives the production a lot of bang for the buck. The CGI special effects are used sparingly, but well. That is something I will definitely give credit to this movie for, is not overusing CG. Like, I definitely noticed it, but I wouldn't say it was like taking away my attention or detracting from what the movie was trying to do. So kudos to not going ham on the CG. I know it can be easy to do that, especially with like supernatural leaning horror films, so I guess I do appreciate some of the restraint there. Congratulations to our female lead who carries the movie. What a task. I know that can only be achieved with a supportive production team too, so many thanks to all involved. Yeah, I definitely agree with this. I think Camille Sullivan, who plays Mia, puts a lot out there on screen, and I know it's hard to do. Like, there's a lot of emotion, highs and lows that are coming through, so big kudos to her. I think it's a great performance, so I hope she's proud of it. That was tepid at best, but we gotta get to the 1-star reviews. Let's see what those assholes are saying. Our first 1-star review comes from Xenojax. I really thought this movie would be something different, but instead it follows a generic found footage movie. The budget, considering being quite low for a film, kinda shows. I actually disagree with this because I don't think this is a generic found footage movie. I actually really like the found footage elements of this movie. I think they could have been done different and better, but I don't think it was generic. I think it was interesting how it was moved in here, but I also don't feel like the budget shows. I don't feel like this looks like that cheap of a movie. I've seen a lot higher budget movies look a lot worse than this, so I think the budget was fine, and I think it looked fine for the budget, so I don't know, I disagree with this off the top. The acting was passable, but it's the directing and writing that really affects the movie. The plot just gets lost along the way, and the pacing suffers. I guess being a decent critic doesn't mean you will automatically become a good director, and it shows painfully throughout the entire runtime of the film. Yeah, I mean, being a good critic definitely doesn't mean you'll be a good director. Like, that's just not how that works. Analyzing and breaking down a film is wholly different than writing and directing and running an entire production. Those are two very different jobs. I tend to give first-time directors a little leniency, you know, when I see their films, but there's a lot of directorial debuts that are amazing, and this just really isn't. I hope Chris Stuckman can like see this and learn and grow. Not see this review. I doubt he'll ever see this review, but I hope he sees his own film and can kind of learn from it and learn from people around him, take some notes, and do better on the next one. And finally, our last 1-star review comes from Icy Rumination. Shelby Oaks is poorly written and directed. The plotting is akin to 12-year-old children sitting around a campfire telling horror stories and adding parts as they go along. I definitely felt that, especially in the second half of the movie. It was like, Mia goes here, and then she gets spooked, so then she goes here, and then she gets spooked, so she goes here, and then. The ending rips off Hereditary and Rosemary's Baby, but has no point of its own. It's not clever. There's no character development, no heart, just random symbols, CGI animals, and pure aimlessness. Yeah, this definitely speaks to one of my points before. I don't feel like this movie was about anything. It's just like rushing towards an end that is supposed to be shocking. But I will push back against one thing. I guess at the very end, those were real dogs mauling Riley. At least I read in one of the trivia sections on IMDb or something that they had like brought in these trained dogs to come and like feast on her body, not literally, but come in and like, you know, pretend to eat her and stuff. So I don't know, it did look CG though, so I will say that. So all that said, would I recommend Shelby Oaks? No, not really. Like, it starts relatively strong, or it starts relatively interesting, but when it falls apart, it doesn't do it in a fun way. Like, there's nothing to grab onto. This movie doesn't let us have any fun, damn it. That being said, I do think this movie will work for some people out there. When the lights came on in my theater, I looked over at my girlfriend, who immediately said, I did not like this at all. But the two ladies in front of us stood up, and they talked to each other. They were like, wow, I don't know why everybody's hating on this movie. I thought it was really great. I loved it. I have no idea why people are hating on it so much. So I don't know, make that what you will. I guess some people like it. I just don't find myself in that category. I wanted to like this movie so bad, but it really just did everything it could to get in its own way. So I don't know. Also, shout out to Keith David, who was in one scene and got to like just sit the whole time. Like, that's my guy. I love him, and I'm glad he was in this movie, but he didn't really do anything. So kudos to him. I hope he got a good paycheck out of it. So what'd you think of Shelby Oaks? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comments. That's what they're there for. But if you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much for sticking around. I'm this close to 1 million subscribers, so make sure to smash that like and subscribe button. That way the president of YouTube can come over to my studio apartment and drop off a dump truck full of cash.